say is a very warm Akwaba. Oh. Welcome. I'm delighted that we should have a combined effort tonight with the Deputy High Commissioner and with a charity of which I'm patron, so it's all my fault, Afrikids, who work in the northeast region of Ghana. It is a wonderful, wonderful organisation educating little people, because when we started 20 odd years ago, we did not have education and healthcare up in Bolgatanga and Surigu in the way that we have it now today, thanks to Afrikids. Afrikids is an unusual organisation in that it raises quite a lot of the money towards the care of over 100,000 children who are in education as a result of their work. It raises more than a third of its money in Ghana itself, and that is unusual. It's also an unusual charity in that it has built up its running of the business, and it is a little business, in such a way that it spends ever less on administration and all those things that you don't want to do. I know, I'm a donor too, and so I have great time for them and a lot of patience. Ghana is one of my favourite places, as I've said. I have known many presidents, starting with Jerry Rawlins and now with Nana Akufo. It is actually a pleasure always to arrive in Accra, to go up to Tamale and further afield to see what they're all up to. And it's a very industrious country. But that's not for me to say, because that's why we have the Deputy High Commissioner with us this evening. And I'm absolutely delighted. Madam Rita Tani Iddi should be with us, and she will talk to you a little bit first, and then I will talk to you about why it's important to talk to your friends about what we're seeking to do with this wonderful idea, time to shine. Give children education, and that gives them, in their later years, time to shine.
My Lords, Honourable Minister Michael, Chairman Rehman, Baroness, distinguished members of the Consecutive Foreign and Commonwealth Council, distinguished business executives, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am humbled to join you this evening in this August House as part of the Consecutive Foreign and Commonwealth Council meeting. We are here as a team from the Ghana High Commission to have a very fruitful engagement with the Council. I think with me we have the Minister, Head of Chancery, Mrs. Matilda Aku Alomote Osayajiman, and then the Minister for Trade and Investment, Mr. Kofi Addo. As most of you are always aware, the current government, under the able leadership of Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, shares a similar political orientation with the Consecutive, believing in the private sector as the engine of growth. Furthermore, the policy of the NPP government, that is the ruling government in Ghana, as enshrined in our constitution and credited to one of our founding members, Dr. J.B. Dankwa, is, I quote, to liberate the energies of the people for growth of a property-owning democracy in this land with right to life, freedom, and justice as the principles to which the government and the laws of the land should be dedicated in order specifically to enrich life, property, and liberty of each and every citizen, unquote. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Ghana has maintained a strong relationship with the government and people of the United Kingdom, which has brought about mutual benefits to the two countries. We recently received or hosted the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, and the Duchess of Cornwall as part of the Royal African Tour. As a member of the Commonwealth League of Nations, Ghana continues to enjoy tremendous bilateral cooperation and assistance from the United Kingdom in almost all sectors of our economy. However, much more remains to be done for both parties to have greater benefits, particularly in the area of bilateral trade and investment. Total bilateral trade between the two countries is estimated at 1.4 billion pounds, with trade in favor of the United Kingdom. It is therefore important that our two countries, through the private sector, deepen and expand our engagement using these existing platforms to better promote shared growth and prosperity. We therefore see this evening's event as timely as we seek to deepen our bilateral trade and investments. Ladies and gentlemen, the fundamental principles that guide Ghana's foreign policy are contained in Ghana's 1992 Constitution. Article 40 of the Constitution provides the broad principles underpinning our foreign policy as follows. 1. Promotion and protection of the interests of Ghana. 2. Establishment of a just and equitable international economic, political, and social order. 3. Promotion of respect for international law and treaty obligations. 4. Promotion of the settlement of international disputes through peaceful means. 5. Adherence to the principles enshrined in the Charter and aims at the ideals of the United Nations, the African Union, the ECOWAS, the Commonwealth, and the non-aligned movement. To add impetus to these broad principles is a recent call by our president to build an Africa beyond aid, which is resonating in every African country and has received support from most of his colleagues on the continent and other world leaders. For us as Ghanaians, Ghana Beyond Aid is summarized by His Excellency the President's speech delivered at the 61st Independence Celebration, in which he stated as follows, and I quote, "Aid was not meant to be what would bring us to a developed nation status. A Ghana Beyond Aid is a prosperous and self-confident Ghana that is in charge of its economic destiny. To get to a Ghana Beyond Aid, we will have to effectively harness and our own resources, and creatively and effectively deploy them for the rapid economic and social transformation. It requires hard work, enterprise, creativity, and consistent fight against corruption in public life. It will also require that we break from a mentality of dependency and adopt a confident can-do spirit, fueled by love of our dear country, and not subordinate the common goal to build a prosperous nation to the selfish interest of a few," unquote. Ghana is always noted as being the first in the sub-region in many events, and made yet another historic feat on Friday, 23rd November, at the London Stock Exchange. The exchange witnessed the listing of the first local currency bond from Ghana and West Africa. The listing of a 45 million Ghana cedis, approximately $10 million US, at the exchange was a guaranteed corporate bond by Quantum Terminals Group, a leading energy infrastructure developer in Ghana. The success of the bond is proof of investor interest in building exposure in Ghana and a great example of how development finance institutions should partner with the private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, barely 2 months ago, on 14th October, the High Commissioner, His Excellency Papa Owusu-Ankomah, had the opportunity to join other high-level officials to witness in Accra the launch of the UK-Ghana Business Council. The Business Council, which will meet twice a year, brings both governments together to find ways to reduce barriers to trade and investment, as well as create jobs. This underscores the UK government's confidence in the political leadership of His Excellency Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana. The High Commission, in collaboration with the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, also organized a 2-day Ghana Investment and Opportunity Summit at the Hilton Hotel, Park Lane, on 23rd to 24th October on the theme, Mobilizing for Ghana Beyond Aid, which attracted impressive patronage from all sectors of the economy. Without a conducive business environment, one cannot attract the needed investment, and that is why the government is committed to building a strong macro economy. Government's commitment to building a strong macro economy is being achieved and has managed to bring down the deficit of 9.4% in 2016 to 6.3% last year, and estimated to decline further to 4.5% by the end of this year. Overall, in consolidating the macro economy, inflation as at the end of September 2018 was 9.8%. Ghana is forecasted to be one of the most performing economies in Africa this year. Interest rates are declining and exchange rate is relatively stable. Ghana is on the path of digital transformation, which is expected to revolutionize our development agenda. We have introduced an e-registration of companies, and you can register your company online from UK. Paperless clearance of goods from the ports as part of trade facilitation process. Digitalize the processing of driving license and vehicle registration. Rolled out the issuance of national ID cards with facial, iris, and biometric identification for everybody in Ghana. Whether you are a foreigner or indigenous Ghanaian, you would be uniquely identified. Government has also launched a digital property address system, which means every 5 by 5 square meter of Ghana today has a unique digital property address. In effect, you can identify everybody and locate every business, and this opens up the space for e-commerce and etc. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with our location in the center of the world, you can reach every part of the world from Ghana with direct flights to most European cities and America. Investing in Ghana, a gateway to the West Africa market, gives you access to about 350 million people with increasing middle class and youthful population. At this stage of our development, we are keen on partnering with foreign investors in the areas of agri and agro processing, that is one district, one factory. Infrastructural developments as railways, roads, hospitals, housing, etc. Financial, banking, insurance, pension funds, mutual funds, etc. Manufacturing involving availability of local raw materials. That is for fertilizer, textiles, pharmaceuticals, cement, etc. Energy, downstream, renewable distribution of gas, etc. Ghana can also boast of a pool of highly talented and innovative entrepreneurs in the diaspora who are well positioned to partner their UK counterparts in undertaking any business ventures. Government has also introduced free senior high school education scheme, which has seen more than 90,000 students back to school this year. Government has an ambitious plan to increase our non-traditional exports to about 5 billion in the next 5 years. Some of the notable products earmarked include fresh fruits, cut flowers, shea butter, textiles and garments, cashew nuts, etc., and looking for potential buyers. I have no doubt that at the end of this event, many of you, if not all, will be convinced that it is worth your while to invest in Ghana because you will earn a globally competitive return on your investment. I can assure you that the prospects of Ghana are quite good with its people under the leadership of President Akufo-Addo, poised to work harder to enable Ghana become a roaring African lion comparable to the Asian tigers. I wish to assure you of the commitment of the High Commissioner and the High Commission in the United Kingdom to support and assist investors, make prudent business decisions about Ghana, and I'm looking forward to a fruitful follow-up after this event. Thank you so much for your attention.
I think one thing we're agreed, whether it's leave or remain post-Brexit, we need to look at countries like Ghana, emerging markets. And the reason I say that, up till 4 weeks ago, I was a government trade envoy, one of 32 government trade envoys looking at 64 markets around the world, emerging markets, and countries like Ghana at the heart of it. Because if you look at projected economic growth for the next 15 to 20 years, 90% of that will be outside of the European Union. If you're looking at countries which are looking at economic growth and where you have regulatory reform taking place the way it needs to be done. And I wasn't being rude when I was looking at my phone, I was looking at the figure of ease to do business. The country I used to look at was Pakistan, was 140, and it needed massive reform. I didn't know the number. Where are you on the ease to do business, Deputy High Commissioner? What number are you on that? Because I think that is the indication of the reform that is taking place. But Ghana, every listing I had when I was a trade envoy, looking at different continents, Ghana is the place to go in Africa. Connectivity, reform, and you have government which is committed to transparency. What I would like to say to you, Deputy High Commissioner, is this. What is so great for Ghana in terms of representation in the United Kingdom is not only do you have a diplomat, you have somebody who's been a teacher, you have somebody who is trained teachers, you have somebody who's been a member of parliament, you have somebody in this Deputy High Commissioner who has been a minister. They get how the government works. And also what I love about your country is the commitment to reforming education, to ensure that our future generation get the education to be whatever they want to be, to make sure they have the skill set. And with your bulging youth population, if you give them the right skill set, you can make sure that your country goes from strength to strength at every level. And thank you for sharing that overall presentation and the opportunities that there are between the UK and Ghana. The 1.4 billion bilateral trade, I am certain, will go from strength to strength at every level. So thank you for that. And you don't need me to say that. I've got Baroness Chalker sitting next to me who knows Africa far better than many in Parliament and did a brilliant job as a minister. I can confirm. And she's in the talk. I know she's in the talk, but I just wanted to introduce her to say what a great job. So when somebody talks about Ghana and Africa, you have here somebody who's been a minister, who gets government, and who is well respected across the continent on that. So without further ado, can I pass it over to you, Baroness Chalker, to give an overview? But thank you, Deputy High Commissioner.
Deputy High Commissioner, Minister of State Michael Bates, it's a joy to have you here. Education is the foundation of all the opportunities, and the Ghanaian government have now taken this decision with secondary education, but we are still in the position where lots of little children cannot go to school because there are not the teachers, and where time to shine comes into this whole picture is because we want to help the Ghanaian government as AfriKids to get the little ones into school and keep them in school, particularly the girls, so that they will have the chance to take the opportunities of secondary education which this current government in Ghana is now providing. When I first visited, now it's a long while ago, 1986 Ghana, it was in fact mostly active in the southern areas I didn't know very much about the northeast and the northwest, but very soon a family who the mother of the family is here tonight, Mrs. Cohen, but whose daughter, Georgie Cohen, started AfriKids because she went out there, I think on a gap year. It was a gap year, yes. And came back and said, we must do something about education for little ones and keeping them healthy up in the north. Now, we don't talk about north versus south in Ghana. In fact, the president is very careful not to do so. But there is no doubt that there is more education along the coastal region than there is in the centre and the north. And my experience of Ghana is that I've seen it go through some pretty big dips. I've seen it come up again in the days of President John Kufuor, and I've seen it bump along. And now we have a president who is determined to make the country rise and shine. But you cannot get that to happen unless you have educated people who are going to help it ahead. And at the moment, there is so much going on for Ghana that is very positive and very true. And the High Commissioner, Deputy High Commissioner, said in her very thoughtful speech, we wanted to see what opportunities there are for this country to help Ghana take another step forward. Now, you may have heard that the Department for International Development, whose Minister of State has graced us with his presence this evening, he doesn't very often get let out across the other side of the road. We keep him busy there. They have taken the decision that for money raised by AfriKids, they will match that money, provided we can get to a certain sum by the 2nd or the 4th of March? The 4th of March next year. It's DFID's way of helping people to help themselves. So we have people in Ghana raising money for the education and health of little ones. We are raising money, not tonight, but in future, for the health and the education of little ones. And the name of the campaign is, as you can see on the poster there, Time to Shine, because we want to give them that very education, particularly the girl children. Girls have a bigger influence on the upbringing of small children, wherever it may be in the world. Sorry, fellas, but it's true. They learn more initially from their mums. And we want to make sure that children everywhere, although we're active as AfriKids in the northeast province in Ghana, give them the chance. And with the matching money from DFID, I hope that we can increase the number of children in our care from just over 100,000 children in that area to 500,000 in no time at all. So we are explaining to you why AfriKids is also here tonight, because they support the policies that the Minister was outlining to us just now. So I hope we can help Ghana in the months ahead. British government is certainly working with, because you are doing the right things, and that is what it really engages me so much.
On the use of doing business, Ghana runs 114.
114.
Yes.
It's much better
Then,
than it used to be.
The fact is, from the beginning, the young ones in school, from primary, nursery, and so on, it's already free. And the senior secondary school, everybody is to go free now. And we are also hammering on vocational and technical education, so that after they leave the senior secondary school, those who will go to universities will go, and the others also go to the vocational or technical institutions. And then more teachers are being trained. These teachers, in the first place, they used to give them some allowances, but it was stopped in some way. But now it has been reintroduced, and allowances are given to the teachers so that they can continue. When they complete, they will be sent to the various areas where these schools are.
I've studied a little the role of China in Africa, and I'm wondering if there has been any new thinking in DFID with regard to how one assists developing countries. For example, China will say, we won't give you a hospital, we'll give you the entire school infrastructure for your country. Oh, by the way, we will train all of your staff in China, or we will bring personnel who will train them, and over a period of 20 to 30 years, we will hand over the entire structure to you. I knew someone in DFID a number of years ago, and I posed this question, and I really didn't get a response which suggested to me there was any fresh thinking, or indeed any looking at the ways in which, in the modern world, in the modern competitive world, the country, particularly the United Kingdom outside Europe, should continue to be relevant in Africa.
For us in Africa, and in particular Ghana, we are just being strategic in our negotiations with the Chinese. As we are speaking now, we have entered into what we call a barter trade system for them to explore some of the critical natural resources that we believe that we can use these natural resources to turn our economy around. So we are being very, very careful in the dealing with the Chinese. But I have to be frank with you, whether we like it or not, the influence of the Chinese cannot be written off. But it is up to us to just position ourselves to get the best out of every negotiation with them.
If we want to achieve the same sustainable development, we need $3.5 trillion of investment every year. At the moment, we have $1.4 trillion, of which $150 billion is aid. So that tells you two things. First of all, the need is enormous, that aid as a percentage of what is actually going to solve the problems is relatively small and must always be in the form of a catalyst rather than a substitute. Those are very important issues. So within those parameters, you then look at the Chinese investment in Africa, which is very significant. Yep. One of the things which is very much the case about UK aid, and indeed all of the OECD countries' aid, is it's very transparent as to how much we're giving and where we're giving, and that's part, aid transparency is a very key part of the way in which we operate around the world. Now, it's very difficult to put a number on what the amount of Chinese aid is in Africa. Some people have estimated it to be in the region of 50 billion, which would be huge. To put that in context, the UK bilateral aid and via multilateral is probably about 5 billion per year into Africa. So it's a very significant, sum. What we at DFID do is we believe that the right way to do it, there are some people who take a skeptical view. They question whether loans are the right way to deliver aid, whether that's adding to the indebtedness that the Jubilee campaign and many others try to relieve many countries from, of excessive lending. Our approach is to say, listen, overwhelmingly listen, our passion is to help the poorest people in the world. We believe in Africa, we believe in its potential. Africa is not a problem we see, it's an enormous opportunity, so we see. So therefore, when people come with ideas, we have taken the view that we shouldn't say no or be skeptical, but we ought to seek to work with China. So that's what DFID's role is. So DFID has an office in China. They graduated from aid some time ago, but we retain an office. And the reason we retain an office is to work with them, to partner with them in their investment, to try and help them as they're doing this work towards our common goal.
The highest form of our contribution is the financial sector, the services, followed by manufacturing and then agriculture. But that is where the problem is. We want to make sure that we move the economy into the manufacturing sector. That is where we can create the jobs and make sure that the number of students that are being churned out from the university can also work. In addition, one of the notable areas that are coming up is fintech. Right now, it is estimated that by the year 2020, Ghana might beat Kenya in terms of mobile money transfer. It is catching up everywhere. You go to every rural area in Ghana, a farmer, anybody, at least they have 2 phones. All that they know is to be able to use the phone to take money or to pay. So it is something that is catching up. Apart from this, the fintech industry is also driving Ghana's economic development. Some of these young guys from UK, US, Germany have come back and they have developed so many apps. Some of them you can determine at the farm gate the prices of your produce. You can use the apps to determine the weather. You can even use the apps to determine the fertility of the soil. So this is catching up. So these are some of the interesting areas that we are looking for investors. So we are saying that Ghana is on the go. Thank you very much.
We've been very privileged and proud to have as our patron Baroness Chalker since the very beginnings of AfriKids in the late 90s. So huge thanks again, Linda, for inviting us to speak this evening. AfriKids' story began with a young lady called Georgie, who Linda's already mentioned this evening, and she visited Ghana in her late teens, and she was struck, as everyone who visits Ghana is, by the incredible warmth and friendliness of the people there. AfriKids works in Ghana's very rural, very poor northern regions, and perhaps what these smiles don't show you is quite how tough life can be there. 6 in 10 families here live in poverty, and 1 in 10 children don't survive to their 5th birthday. Georgie ended up staying in Ghana for several months, and what struck her even more than the hospitality of the people there was their sheer determination and resilience. She met local heroes who were doing remarkable things, working selflessly and with very little resource to support children in their communities. Children from very poor families, often living on the streets, working in dangerous mines, and at risk of abuse and neglect. Georgie naturally wanted to help them, and when she returned home, that feeling was highly contagious. The generosity of the people in the UK, she was able to support these local heroes to do more than they'd ever imagined. They were building schools, they were setting up safe homes, and they were getting kids into education. Today, AfriKids is the leading organisation for child rights in northern Ghana, and we now have around 20 projects run by an incredible, brilliant, extremely dedicated team of around 120 local staff and volunteers. What Georgie learned, even at the very beginning, was that the most effective way to support people, and particularly children in these communities, was not to come in and run our own projects and decide what we thought was going to fix the problems. It was about empowering those local heroes and many more like them to deliver the solutions, the ideas, the projects that they knew would work and would create sustainable and lasting change. We now support around 100,000 children every year to be healthy, safe and in school. And we've learned that perhaps the most effective role that we play is really in ensuring children go to school. This is perhaps the most critical factor in ensuring that they can escape life in poverty for good. Studies show that for every £1 that we invest in education in this part of the world, in developing countries, if you want to call them that, unlocks £10 in new earnings. So you can see how that opportunity, amplified across communities, across countries, can unlock huge potential to probably, solve a lot of the problems that we face as a global community and achieve a stronger, fairer world for us all. I'd like to tell you about a lady called Jennifer. I don't know if she's going to appear on the screens, we'll look out for her. Jennifer was born into a very poor family in northern Ghana, nothing unusual about that. And also what was not unusual is that none of the women in her family had ever been to school. Everyone in the family worked incredibly hard to make ends meet. Long days grafting on the farm, selling snacks by the roadside to earn a little bit of cash. Very typical situation for a family in this part of the world. And she did manage to start school. She was incredibly determined about an education and very hard working. And as we've heard, schooling is primary school and now secondary school, I'm glad to say, is free in Ghana. But where AfriKids plays a role in the north is bridging the gap between perhaps well-intended policy, very effective policy, and practice, and the reality that's faced by incredibly poor families in the north. So often it's the very simple things like school uniforms and school books that are just unaffordable. In fact, to put into context, the cost of providing those materials for one child for a year is about a month's earning for an adult, and a child would have to work for 6 months to cover those costs. So you can see very quickly it doesn't add up. And again, testament to the dedication of Ghana and their public sector to education. Her teachers saw how determined she was to be educated. They were hand making her uniforms, they were giving her food, trying to help through this situation. But in the end, her family, she was needed too much at home to help, and she was forced to drop out of school before she completed primary education. One day she went to her local village well and she was collecting water, and she met another young girl called Caroline. And Caroline was more fortunate than she was. She was in school, and her school had been working with AfriKids, who had set up a child rights club in that school, which is about teaching children about their rights, and a big focus actually on building their confidence. That's a big part of what we do, is not just trying to educate kids and bums on seats in schools, but giving them the voice and, you know, to demand and be agents of change themselves. And Caroline was so active in her child rights club that she's actually now a youth ambassador in her community. And when she met Jennifer and she heard her story, it was unacceptable to her that another girl had dropped out of school, and she was determined to help her go back. So determined was she that she went to visit Jennifer's family with her to tell them about how important it was their girl went back to school, and she even arranged a visit for the family to come to her school and speak to the teachers about how they could help. This is a 13, 14-year-old girl. Jennifer is now back in school. She's classmates with Caroline and she's top of her class, and she's now dreaming of being a lawyer. So just one example of thousands that I could give you of the potential that we are all starting to see from these investments in education. Jennifer completing her primary education gives her own children a 40% better chance of surviving to age 5, and far more likely to be educated themselves. When we achieve primary education for all girls worldwide, there'll be 1.7 million fewer malnourished children in the world. When they all have a secondary education, 60% fewer underage pregnancies will occur, and child deaths will be halved. So achieving universal education isn't just a nice thing to do. It's a no-brainer. It makes sense on every socio-economic level. And every child, as far as I'm concerned, that's being left behind is holding us all back from a future world that could be free of poverty. The UK was the first country, G7 country, to meet the commitment of 0.7% GDP in 2013, and we haven't reneged on that since. It may not be a universally popular decision, but it's one that I think we should be enormously proud of, and I think that sentiment is shared in the room. As a global leader, we set an example to our global community that eradicating poverty is a shared responsibility, but also an investment that benefits us all. Not only does this support the alleviation of suffering and help some of the world's poorest people, it's also fundamental to our own interests and security, and ultimately, as we've heard, to a future beyond aid. What I love about Jennifer's story is that this is not a tale of AfriKids rescuing a child and giving them a handout. What makes AfriKids different, as far as I'm concerned, is that our projects are entirely designed and run by local people, for local people, in ways that will make sense in those communities, in ways that empower local people to own that change so that it will be sustained and we can step away. We work with people at all levels of society, authorities, communities, as I've mentioned, GES, GHS, because we know it's really important that everybody understands how important it is that these kids are healthy, safe and educated, and that they take ownership of that themselves, and we all work together to make that happen. As I say, we believe that any child missing out on school is a missed opportunity for us all, and we work hard every day to make sure that no child is left behind. Ghana has been continent leading in its commitment to education, as we've heard. Almost all children in Ghana now enrol in school, 95%. But as I say, up in the north where we are, very difficult circumstances, huge pressures on incredibly poor families, and we're seeing up to 65% of kids drop out before they finish primary education, which is now what we're working on. So a big focus for us over the next 3 years is retention, what we call retention, so actually completing primary education, but also improving the quality of education that's delivered. So we're training teachers, we're improving infrastructure, we're making schools accessible to kids with disabilities, a lot of focus on ending child marriage and achieving, well, we have gender parity actually at enrolment stage for primary schools. So definitely the intention and the will is there, but we've just got to see these kids through. We're working hard to change this, and thank you, Linda, for mentioning our Time to Shine appeal, which has launched with the support of the UK government. We're delighted that all public donations to the appeal made before the 4th of March will be matched, meaning we can do even more than we'd ever imagined to support kids with work like this. So there's a few of us in the room tonight. Look out for the AfriKids pins, Linda included. Do ask us any questions. We would love to talk to you, meet you, talk more. Thank you so much.
Deputy High Commissioner, on behalf of the CFCC and everybody here, we're delighted to hear what you have to say. I've said this on many occasions in the politics of the present, that for a long time we've concentrated far too much on Europe and not enough on developing our interests outside, which is the growing part of the world. And I hope now there may be a change of emphasis, and we thank you for what you've said, and I'm sure you're much involved in what I'm saying about improving trade relations between our two countries.